Hey y'all, let's talk a little bit about the common deliverables that you might be producing as a UI UX designer. There are so many tools that a UX designer has in their tool belt, especially if you're coming out of the graphic design industry where you can leverage other types of talents, whether that's typography or illustration, and pour that into a career as a UX professional. There are so many different things that a UX designer does. Nielsen Norman, which is a great resource and really an industry leader in UI UX design, said that traditionally, in the context of user experience, a deliverable is a document that serves as a record of work that has occurred. And so, off the bat, you might ask yourself, well, what even is a deliverable? And that's a great statement. A deliverable is a document that serves as a record of work that has occurred. The deliverables for a project are the tangible record, and those deliverables build upon each other to create what oftentimes we ultimately see as a prototype. Think of things like usability tests and wireframes and prototypes and personas and flowcharts are all types of different deliverables. And if you're asking yourself, I don't even know what a persona is, we're going to talk about it here in a second. All these different deliverables are tools in a UX designer's tool belt. Whether you might find yourself as a freelancer or serving in an agency or a corporate environment, those deliverables can be produced as a one-off. So maybe you're working with a client and they're just interested in how people are interacting with their current product or their current website. You can run a usability test and deliver analytics and findings to show them exactly what users might be saying. If a client really just wants to imagine what the future could be, you could produce a wireframe or a prototype or create a mood board to help them understand kind of what might set the stage for future work. It's really, at the end of the day, a deliverable is something that you produce as a designer that serves as a leave behind for the work that you're ultimately doing. Those artifacts continue to build upon each other, like I said, until you reach the ultimate deliverable, whatever that deliverable might be. Nielsen Norman also reached out and asked industry leaders, design experts, what were some of the most common deliverables that they produced as a designer, whether they produce them often or sometimes, and these are the results. There's quite a number of them, right? There's over 10, there's over a dozen. And these that are highlighted here in pink are actually ones that we're going to be producing inside of this course in this semester. So we're going to be focusing on wireframes and interactive prototypes, site mapping, usability reports or user research. We're going to be focusing on how to create a style guide. We'll build personas, we'll do paper prototyping, and we'll also create a mood board, or an element collage is another word for it, but we typically call it a mood board. And so, as you can see, there are a wide variety of different types of different types of deliverables and things that you would be asked to produce as a UX designer. We're going to focus on more than a handful here in this course. Hopefully, you see how these deliverables build upon each other to create a great artifact as a UX designer for any project that you might be working on. Let's start with maybe diving into mood boards and what exactly even are mood boards. If you've had a graphic design course already, and you should have if you're in this course, you've probably put together maybe an inspiration board or gathered ideas around the web to inspire what your design might be. And a mood board in UX design is really that same thing. So like I said, as designers, you're probably already familiar with this. Mood boards are just a great way to help us determine the visual inspiration for the project. It's a collection of things that help inspire you or help kind of guide you in where you want to take the project. And so on the screen here on the right-hand side, you see a variety of different examples. Typically, they include what colors are you going to use within the project? What's the font that you will be using? What are some adjectives that describe it? And so for the closed market, you see there in the very top, adjectives that would describe this site are fresh, organic, high quality, natural. Maybe for this kids mood board, you see bright, colorful, illustrative. You see photos of real products, cartoons, things like that. These can be created in on Pinterest is a great way to start your mood board. A tool called InVision, which we'll talk about here throughout the course. Illustrator and Photoshop are great tools as well. Our primary tool for this course is going to be Adobe XD. And so you'll be creating your first mood board in Adobe XD. You can also use tools like PowerPoint and Keynote. All that to say is that creating a mood board is not designated only to designers in their role with specific tools. Mood boards can be created everywhere. You can be created out of anything, and are a great foundational piece to kickstart any new project that you have. Personas are another deliverable that a UX designer might produce, and one that we'll be exploring here in this course. Now, on the right-hand side, I think you see just a classic example of what you might expect from a UX designer for a persona. It includes a photo of a real person. Typically in the UX space, we want to include a real person. If you include a celebrity or an animal or a cartoon, especially if it's not your user, it tends to distract. And so we like to make sure we're being as purposeful and as intentional with that persona and not distracting from what we're really trying to achieve. And so you can imagine if you put a picture of a celebrity in here, that might distract from your audience, from your stakeholder, from folks who might be signing off on your work, and including a picture of a real person is really helpful. Personas help you to understand who it is that you're designing for. Sometimes as a UX designer, as a graphic designer, what you're creating, you might ultimately not be the persona or the audience for. I've been in that position where I've been designing a campaign or a product for somebody that is just not me. And so you have to put yourself in their shoes and really understand their motivations, their goals, their frustrations, their pain points, and really interpret that through your designs. And personas really help us keep the who at the forefront of everything that we're doing. Typically in personas, you'll see a purpose statement, and you see a customer profile here in Janelle's example. It'll include demographic information, how old they are, where they're from, what's their education level, what are some of their other things that they interact with. Are they active on social media? Are they active on any type of specific social media? What are their likes, dislikes, wants, needs? What are their frustrations, their pain points? Where might be their hiccups within your product? And personas just really serve as a ground level for us to say, okay, this is who we're designing for. This is our primary user base, our ideal user persona for our product. Typically, depending on the product, you might have one. You could have upwards of 3 to 5. Typically, once you get broader than that, they become a little bit more a little too specific for a user persona. So typically in that 1 to 5 range of different types of people who would be using your product. It can be created, again, in Illustrator or Photoshop, Adobe XD. Again, also PowerPoint and Keynote. Not a deliverable that is specifically a designer who knows how to use a certain tool, but really is something that everybody can do, everybody can use, but oftentimes is the job of a UX designer. So like I said, on the right-hand side, you see a pretty traditional persona that would be a deliverable for a UX designer. I want to share this example as well. I'm pretty sure this comes from a Mailchimp persona within their organization. And what I really love about this is you can tell somebody who went to design school probably did this persona. Somebody who was passionate about typography and illustration. They took their personas. I took a beautiful photograph of Mario, the studio consultant, and put the words or the adjectives that might describe him as their user. He's smart, a problem solver. He's a creative. He's an expert. So he's already coming to the tool with expert knowledge of what to expect. He's in the field of marketing. He's a manager. He's self-reliant. And the same thing here on the right-hand side. I love the way they used photography and typography. And so what I hope you can see in this course is that while some of this might be new for you, new terminology, new language, a new environment to design in, you can still leverage those skills as a graphic designer to become a great UX, UI professional because really those graphic design skills are foundational to building a great UX design portfolio. And I just think this is a great twist on personas. I've been in organizations where they'll actually print these out 18 by 24 and plaster them all over the space for the development team, for the creative team, so they always can see, they can always know who they're designing for. All right, let's move on to the next one. User research is another thing we're going to talk about here in this course. And there's a variety of different ways to accomplish user research. Really, anytime you're talking to your user, your potential user, it's a great thing. Sometimes you might be in the position where a company might just not talk to their user, and you can see where their product might struggle when it's driven by goals that aren't user-based. And so we always want to put, as UX design professionals, the user first in everything that we do. So anytime you talk to your user, it's really a great thing. When you kick off a project, you can talk with your users and ask more open-ended questions. What might you expect? What would you like to see? How would you describe? Some of those more open-ended questions, and listen. One of the keys to being a good user experience designer is to be empathetic and just to listen. And take those wants, those needs from the user of your product and pour them back into the product that you're creating. After a product launches is a great opportunity for something like Google Analytics or usertesting.com. Some of these platforms that enable analytics and statistics, so you can see where your success metrics, where your successful points in your product are, or maybe where your drop-offs are, where a user is struggling within your products. And so whether you're on the front end of a product or back end of a product, it's always a great time to conduct user research. And we're going to dig a little bit into that here in this semester. Typically, user research includes analytics and data, or on the front end would include quotes and summary statements. These first two at the very top are actually some that I created in a master's program that I was a part of on the front end of a project, where we're conducting user interviews and asking for just what they might think a product would look like, or how they might interact with the product. Rating scales are also another classic piece of the puzzle when you're conducting user research. These can be created again in Illustrator or Photoshop. And for this course, since we're going to be focusing in Adobe XD, we'll probably deliver a presentation or something like that in Adobe XD. PowerPoint, Keynote, Word, Pages as well. And again, there are great tools out there like Google Analytics on live product, and then usertesting.com to facilitate real end user feedback. So if you're the type of person who loves analytics, loves data, loves to understand how somebody's interacting with a product, then this will be an awesome opportunity once we dig into this section of our semester. All right. Another deliverable that we're going to be exploring in the semester is a sitemap or an IA map. I'll be honest, when I first started my UX journey, I was not excited by IA maps. Now, 10 years into it, I love it, because what it does is it helps create a blueprint or a map of all the pages, all the things within a product that I have to design for as a UX designer. And it really serves as that layout, that structure of all the different things that create, all the different pages that create a product. They give you as the designer, or your colleague in the future as a developer, or stakeholders, an understanding of the breadth and the depth of a product and how it might be organized, both from the start, and then maybe if you're thinking about a redesign, how you might better structure the navigation, better structure the architecture to increase user performance, user behaviors, and things like that. Think about sitemaps as that visual checklist, like I said, of all the pages that you might need to design, or that you might have to account for within a product. Typically, IA, information architecture, or sitemaps include multiple levels and depth of pages of a product or a site. There are lines to show linking between the pages themselves. And so in this example on the right-hand side, another one that I had created for the Sandusky Community Library website. And so you can see a primary navigation where there is a site search, One of the page categories is books and movies and more. Another one is events, resources, services, etc. And then within events, you have events for kids, events for adults, a full calendar of events. And so it allows you to think structurally about your site, about your content, and really having a sitemap in place really just helps set up for a successful prototype in one of the future steps you might do as a UX professional. These can be created, again, in your classic Adobe Creative Suite tools. There's also third-party tools out there like Glue Maps, which helps create this. There are paid-for products, there are free products, a lot of great different tools out there to help create sitemaps in information architecture. All right, another deliverable is a style guide. We're definitely going to explore this in this course, and design systems. And so if you're familiar with the term Google material design, or if you use an Apple product and you say, oh, wow, I look at this and all these apps kind of look the same, especially if they're Apple native apps. Think about the health app, a calendar app, your Apple Mail. They all kind of have similar components, similar buttons, similar layout. That's because they're using a design system called Apple's Human Interface Guidelines, or the HIG for short. And so we're going to explore how can we create design systems within this interactive design course to create products that are consistent, that are scalable, and allow us to kind of know what colors and fonts and buttons we're going to be using as we create our products. And so design systems and style guides serve as that visual blueprint for your designs. Especially they're helpful when you're collaborating with developers who want to know what a button looks like. They can go to this design system, this style guide, see what that button looks like. Don't have to bother you as the designer to understand what the documentation looks like, what the button looks like, because you've already defined it for them. A well-documented design system increases speed of design, increases productivity. As you advance in your career, you'll understand what that looks like and how it enables a full team of designers and developers to produce even faster. And so your productivity increases with the design system and with a style guide in place. And it'll give you a blueprint for future pages when they come in, or future features of a product, because you already know what the foundational components look like. Design systems typically include fonts and colors and UI components. They can also be created in a variety of the same tools we've talked about and explored, which is the great thing, because we're going to get really familiar with Adobe XD in this course and in this semester. And you can build a great style guide in Adobe XD. Other apps like the InVision app has an add-on called Design System Manager. Not something we're going to explore here in this course, but it's something that I use in my professional role and has been really helpful and fruitful as well. So design systems will be an awesome deliverable that we create inside of this course, and one that you will be asked to create as a UX design professional. All right, now we start to get into what you actually see as the final output of your deliverables, a wireframe or a prototype. Wireframes are awesome. If you've sketched it for things like a poster or stamps or brochures, then you're really just creating the wireframe of a different medium. Wireframes are the sketches for UX designers. And so I know you've probably done some other things in the graphic and interactive design program where you've had to create thumbnails or sketches. And so just think of wireframes as that for UX design, for prototypes. And you'll be awesome. It'll be a great correlation for you. Wireframes allow designers to focus on the layout and the position and the placement, and not get bogged down in, well, what does this button look like, or what's the visual? What are the colors for this? In the professional space, wireframes are great because a lot of business partners have their ideas of what something should look like or what colors should be used, and this just allows you to think in grayscale, to think in black and white. And be able to, not have to deal with some of those more controversial topics about, well, what color should we use? Which really you probably wouldn't think is a controversial thing, but it really is in the professional space. And so these lo-fi prototypes are great. They typically include boxes and shapes. They're always done grayscale Maybe you get a little creative and you throw some color in there, but typically grayscale. And then rough content. I love this example of Coastal Capital. It's if you do a Google search for wireframes, it'll be one of the first ones that come up. It's a pretty popular example of that. But what I love about this is that in this state, we don't know what the navigation is. You can see it's just lines there, but the designer has noted that this will be a horizontal navigation. You can see that there's no really idea of what this content's going to be, but we know basically how it's going to lay out structurally. And one of the important things with wireframes is that it includes annotations. Annotations, if you've never heard that before, are really just these arrows and some explanation as to what you might expect. Where really we see here just what looks like an example of a picture or maybe some thumbnails here. But the designer has said this is a blog post or a featured investment blog that might be promoted here on the site. And so a mixture of low fidelity, quick sketches with some annotation really helps you give an idea of how we might lay out something on the page. These are created with pen and paper, with napkins. I've definitely drawn out some quick prototypes and ideas on napkins. Typically, the best companies and products start on a napkin, or dry erase boards is another great tool. Another version of this in lo-fi wireframes is digital wireframes. So as you can see from where we were, this is a lot more refined. It kind of looks like the final prototype, just in a grayscale view. And where this is helpful is it allows us maybe in this setting to test. Sometimes when you throw a sketch in front of the user, they might be a little confused. When they see this, it looks like a website, it looks like a product. And so if you're going to test, this is a great area to test in. But I won't discredit testing in low fidelity quick sketches because I've definitely seen the benefit of doing that there. But typically users can wrap their head around this better than just a quick sketch. And it allows you to more seamlessly move towards a high fidelity prototype when you're already roughing it in on Adobe XD or InVision or another similar design tool. These digital wireframes can even be linked up to if I linked up this button, so I can actually see what it looks like when I click Learn More. And so there's benefits to digital prototypes. We'll explore this as well later on, I think in Project 4, but gives you an idea of how you can even take what kind of looks like the website and really rough it out to a grayscale wireframe, and still not get bogged down in the photography or the illustrations or the iconography, and really just worry about layout and placement, and where are the calls to actions going to be and things like that. All right, our final deliverable we're going to talk about here in this course is the interactive prototype. This is where Adobe XD, it's the bread and butter, is creating the interactive prototype. This is where you get to put all of your graphic design experiences and the things that you've learned with photography and layout and illustration all into the final piece, the final prototype. The interactive prototype is by far the most requested deliverable for a UX designer. Are up in the top. Wireframes and prototypes are most often the most requested deliverable. And they're often the culmination of all of our deliverables. When we've done our research at the very beginning, we've put together our mood board, we've built a persona, we've talked to our users, we've done information architecture, it all rolls up into this final interactive prototype. And it really is the crown jewel of all of our deliverables rolled into one. The interactive prototype is critical to testing because it paints that real life picture for the user really before a developer has to even develop it. And so you can iterate, you can tweak it here before it's the final product kind of on the web there. And it really gets you an understanding of the full experience of what this product might be. Typically, this includes a full UI design. So all those pages we talked about in the information architecture, a interactive prototype would include those things. It includes interaction layers. So, what happens when I click on overview or support? What happens when I swipe up? Do I see this longer list here in this demonstration of a money sharing application? And so interaction design allows you to do all those things to create a realistic example of what an app or prototype or a website or product might be. These can be created. We're going to focus, like I said, in Adobe XD, but there are other tools like Sketch you might hear, or Figma, or InVision Studio. All these different design tools, just different ways of creating prototypes. Like I said, we're going to focus on Adobe XD here in this course. So I'm excited to be able to dive into all these different types of prototypes with you and be able to walk along with you in this journey. I'm going to be producing some of these myself as we walk through this together. Practice makes perfect. And so I'm going to be, wireframing with you and creating interactive prototypes with you and giving feedback along the way to hopefully help you create some awesome deliverables, some awesome examples of what a UI UX professional might do. So I'm excited in that way, so that at the very end of this, you're going to be able to have 4 awesome portfolio pieces to be able to share in your pursuit for a career in UI UX design. So with that, we'll dive into each of these in their specific projects a little bit deeper, but just wanted to give you an overview of the types of deliverables you might be asked to produce as a UX professional, and some of the deliverables that we're going to be covering here in class. All right, thanks. See y'all. We'll talk to you later. Bye.